2009.
That's what we're doing.
If you look at section 8-9-5B, that's 40.
895B. A fence, but that's not a deer fence. Oh, okay, a deer fence, okay. Except that any open fence or deer fence shall be limited to 8 feet. So I can get a permit for a deer fence now.
That's correct.
And that's not a temporary permit,
That's correct.
it's a permit.
Get a permit for a deer fence that's 8 feet high if it conforms to the setback.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, that's okay.
Rich, go about your
Well, I guess I've documented in writing a couple of times how I feel. I was going to let other people speak first, but I guess I could just summarize. I'm sorry?
a second. Go ahead.
I could summarize this way. I heard three justifications for a deer fence. Excuse me. I heard three justifications for modification to the deer fence ordinance. Modifications to what we now have existing in the village. One was aesthetics, and to my ears that was the predominant concern, was the aesthetics, and I heard the concern expressed primarily as aesthetics of what our village looks like from the public thoroughfares. That's what we share more than anything else. We have a right to our private property, but from the public thoroughfares we have a community. And so what I do on my property as views from the thoroughfare can affect my neighbors. If I put up a shocking pink polka dot fence, I don't think my neighbors would be happy. The way this ordinance is written doesn't address the principal aesthetic concerns from the public thoroughfare, and that's what I heard from resident comment at the Planning Commission. The second justification for making changes, particularly as it relates to deer fences, was that because it was channeling deer, it was inhibiting the movement of deer from A to B, place A to place B. David Needleman testified that he heard Marty Jones say that this was true. I looked through the record, the transcript, listened to the record, did not hear that, so I telephoned Marty Jones and I asked him about that. And I said, do you believe that channeling is something we should be concerned about? He had two comments. He said, if deer want to go from here to there, they're going to do it. They're going to find a way to get from here to there. But then he thought a moment and he said, if you have fences, contiguous fences, which end up pushing deer onto your lanes and roads, he said that might become a safety hazard to motorists. That was the full extent of what he had to say about channeling. There was no data presented at the Planning Commission that channeling was real, that we should be concerned about it, that we have a duty to deer to provide them paths. There was no comment on that. Somehow it was just an assumption that this is a desirable thing, that channeling is necessary. The third area was the idea.
Excuse me, I just want to get that. What do you mean by channeling is necessary?
That we should provide channels for deer to migrate from here to there. Okay, that was part of the conversation at the Planning Commission, was that perhaps the fences, and the comment was deer fences should be pulled back from the property perimeter to allow a path for deer to migrate. I'm using the term channeling just because I heard no other singular expression for it.
Well, I heard that my interpretation of channeling was because the deer fences were there, they would channel the deer to somebody else's property.
Okay, now that's another concept that
that's
I've
not
called herding,
Well,
because there were two separate
okay,
comments
because
that
that's
broke comment.
that's what I thought when you said channeling. That's why
Okay.
it wasn't
say is, similar to the notion that if we have drainage problems and I bring in a lot of soil, then I push the drainage onto my neighbor. The comment, the impression among some residents was, if my neighbor builds a fence or a deer fence, and the deer don't have access to that real estate, then those deer are going to come on my property. Again, no evidence, no data was provided to indicate that this is real.
That's common sense. Go ahead.
Well, it may be common sense, but if you look at scientific literature, that notion is not supported. All the scientific literature talks about carrying capacity, and it's based on the density of deer for a number of factors. And the factors are the plant life that is there to support the deer. It's based on diseases. The more the deer are herded together, the more prevalence of disease there is. But nowhere does anybody say that the deer population is a constant. It adjusts itself to a constant density. So if there's less real estate available, the population will go down. Again, no data was presented to justify that this was a necessary action, that this new ordinance is necessary. Now, the last thing I'd like to say, and then I will be quiet, is there's ample evidence from residents, from the Urban Forest Management Study of 1996, from Chicago Wilderness, from Ryerson, from national studies. There's ample evidence that deer are hazardous, that deer degrade a natural woodland environment. Some of our residents have tried to restore to a natural woodland environment, and this ordinance, the way it is phrased now, is a taking of their property because it deprives them of restoring the woodland the way they would like to, because they understand that deer will browse their woodland and degrade it. It's a taking of their property. So my reluctance to support this ordinance, the way it's written now, is that it did not address, it is not crafted to address the principle which, and the one I think is a justifiable claim, and that is that perhaps we should modify what we do with fences from the perspective of the public thoroughfare, an aesthetic argument. The other two arguments, there is no data presented, it's unsupportable, and yet we're taking property. I really think that this is poorly crafted, and I think we can do much better.
I don't see a solution in here.
Well, my solution is to step back, and step back in a couple of regards. One is, it surprises me that in our village, we have an opportunity to go to professionals and seek their advice, because fences are not unique to our neighborhood. Maybe we have unique problems, but there are municipalities all over that have addressed fence issues. Why wouldn't we go back to a professional, an urban planner or an architect, and ask his advice? Why wouldn't we go to wildlife experts and see if there's a different way to approach this, to see what kind of wiggle room we have?
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Could you tell me another village, city, community of housing in the state of Illinois or in the United States that allows deer fences?
I don't know offhand. I'm suspect
We
that
did
they are
some-
permitted.
We have done some research, and there's no village that has any kind of housing at all that allows deer fences. We couldn't find one in the United States.
Well, Bill, I would counter with this, and I would say if the argument is an aesthetic argument, and I think there's reason to consider that, but if it's an aesthetic argument, why is a 7-foot deer fence or a 7.5-foot deer fence so objectionable when a 6-foot unpainted, galvanized chain link fence is not undesirable? I think if you found 20 residents and asked them which one they prefer, 19 would unequivocally